That word, orderly, struck me as incredibly ironic. My father had died alone in his recliner, watching a TV show with a cat-my steak knife didn't just slip. It snapped at the handle as if it had given up, much like my patience did the moment my stepmother mentioned the word executive. I glanced up, still chewing a piece of tough steak, and saw my mother, Lorraine, smiling over her wine, a smile that suggested a victory in a battle she hadn't even been a part of. My cousin Paige, meanwhile, was discreetly using her phone under the table, likely updating a group chat about the Todd's funeral escape room she had created. Lorraine, enjoying her moment, took slow sips, swirling her glass as if it contained a vintage prize rather than cheap mirth. Your father made a number of changes to the will before he passed, she said, tapping a pile of papers. He wanted everything to be well. You see, heater taped to his leg and a medical alert bracelet that never activated. The only thing orderly about his death was how quickly Lorraine had the death certificate and changed the locks. The first sign that something was wrong appeared the moment I stepped inside. Dad's favorite shredded brown slippers, held together with duct tape, were gone from their usual spot by the door. In their place were flashy, gold sequined house shoes that looked like they belonged to a performer. When I asked about the slippers, she claimed she had donated them. This from a woman who hoarded expired Tupperware lids. Then I noticed his military photo on the mantel, crooked and almost hidden behind a scented candle and fake eucalyptus. Paige saw me staring and gave me a look that said she knew something but was afraid to speak. It was then, as the knife snapped, that I felt this conflict was justified. I calmly leaned back in the chair, which she had reupholstered in a garish flamingo pattern, and asked who had witnessed this new version of the will. My mother blinked once, which was all the confirmation I needed. She fumbled with the papers until she found a page with 2 signatures. One was hers, the other was Paige's. When I looked at Paige, she blurted out the ridiculous excuse that she thought it was a Costco rebate form. I didn't laugh. I just nodded, stood up, and pushed my chair back with a loud scrape. That's interesting, I said calmly, because Dad showed me the will last July. I reminded her that my father was still lucid then and had even asked me why she was calling. His nurse, her life coach, her face fell completely. She clutched her pearl necklace and hissed, "You'll leave here with nothing." I put my fork down. "Perfect," I replied, "because you'll never get another cent from me." Then I walked out. She didn't know what I'd taken, my father's old iPhone, still connected to his icon. It was a voice memo labeled, "If Lorraine messes with the will." My father's shaky but clear voice explained where to find a key to his safe deposit box. He hadn't trusted banks. He trusted metal. The key was taped inside a vent behind the furnace, hidden behind years of dust and a wasp nest. I waited until Sunday when the house was empty and retrieved the key. Instead of going straight to the bank, I made copies, photos, and scans. I wasn't going to a battle without ammunition. When I finally went to the bank and requested access to his box, the clerk seemed nervous. Inside, I found not just a letter or some photos, but a full binder with notarized receipts, documents, and most importantly, an original signed will dated 6 months before Loren's fake one. The real will left the cabin to me, stocks to a veterans charity, and the house in a trust for my son, Charlie. Lorraine was left with a mere $5,000 and a note that read, "To cover the cost of therapy for being you." The real bombshell was a video of my father with oxygen tubes in his nose, reading the will aloud and holding up that day's newspaper. He spoke directly to the camera, anticipating Lorraine's actions and telling me to show everything to his lawyer. Then, there was also a sealed envelope containing proof that Lorraine had been siphoning money from his accounts for years, including signed checks to a man named Eldon and receipts from a resort she never told us about. This wasn't just about money. It was a war my father had started, and now it was my turn to finish it. I immediately went to see Ben, an old-school lawyer who smelled of pine tar and nicotine. He read the documents and grinned, ready for the fight. Noise didn't even begin to cover it. Ben challenged the probate with the real will, video evidence, and financial fraud as an added bonus. Lorraine never saw it coming. I waited until the legal papers were filed and then showed up at her house, tossing the paperwork onto the counter. Her face twisted as she read. Then she hissed, "This is forged." I pulled out my phone. "Want to watch the video?" He even holds up a copy of the Toledo Times from that day. Paige, seeing the real will, panicked, realizing what she had signed was illegal. When Lorraine tried to bluff, claiming my father was a crybaby, I revealed that my father had a toxicology report taken during his last hospice visit. The sleeping pills she insisted he take were interacting with his other medications, making him confused. I played a voice memo from my father. "If you're hearing this, it means Lorraine couldn't resist one last lie. She didn't cry. She just turned to stone. She threatened to sue me, but I pointed out her frozen accounts and the fact that I knew about her life coach, who was just a bartender she was paying off." Paige gasped. "Eldon, check your Venmo history," I said, "or the ring footage of him taking the boat out at 3 a.m. wearing Dad's jacket." Lorraine didn't show up for court. Her lawyer gave a flimsy excuse about medical stress, but we all knew she didn't like being in places she couldn't control. Ben told me she wouldn't disappear, but would instead ferment. He was right. A few days later, my son, Charlie, came home with a gift from Hera's stuffed bear wearing my father's wristwatch, the same watch that was buried with him. I drove to the cemetery at 2 a.m. and dug, but the grave was untouched. She must have stolen the watch before the burial. Ben advised me to wait, saying her ego would eventually lead her to make a mistake. The mistake came a week later when Charlie's friend posted a TikTok video. I noticed a stuffed bear on a mantle that wasn't hers. I tracked down the location, found the bear, and called the police, but I said nothing about the watch. Instead, I let her rant online about inheritance, abuse, and toxic children. Then she started leaving me voicemails, screaming, sobbing, and filled with venom. Ben told me not to record them, but I did anyway. On the 11th one, she finally slipped up, claiming Ben was just as dirty as she was because of something they had done with my father in 1996. I showed the voicemail to Ben. We met, and he pulled out a file from 1996. It was a backdoor real estate trust my parents and he had set up. There was a clause that gave the surviving spouse executive discretion over the assets unless a notarized amendment was made. This meant Lorraine wasn't lying. There was a legal loophole, but on the next page was a sticky note in my father's handwriting. "Keep it for now. It'll lure her out." If you're reading this, it worked. My father had set a trap. Ben explained that if we played it right, we wouldn't just win, we would expose her publicly. He slid a subpoena to Eldon across the desk. Eldon, a nude sky witness and spiritual seduction karaoke host, would definitely talk. And he did. Eldon confessed to everything: the secret accounts, the weekend getaways, and the voice memos Lorraine had left him. In court, we played a recording where she bragged about how easy it was to manipulate my father and how I was a little prick who would choke on his justice. Lorraine sat frozen. Then I played the final video of my father reading the real will. The judge ruled from the bench, nullifying the fraudulent will, distributing the assets as my father intended, and ordering an investigation into Lorraine for financial elder abuse and document fraud. She just stood up and walked out, a ghost whose contract had expired. 3 days later, I received an envelope with a photo of Charlie taken outside his school. She had been there. I called Ben, and he said we needed to speed things up. She had liquidated everything before her accounts were frozen. But we subpoenaed the person who helped her, a man named Vic. He had kept all the records for blackmail. And we found that she had funneled the money through a shell company named Charlie's Legacy Holdings LLC. She had used my son's name to launder money. I went to her house. She was in the living room, a wine glass in her hand, toying with the flag case that held my father's military burial flag, a fire crackling behind her. She told me children were just leverage. Overcome with rage, I threw a USB drive at her feet containing every voicemail, every memo, and Eldon's testimony. You so much as breathe in my direction again, I will bury you under your own rot. I grabbed the flag case and left. It all came crashing down for her on a Tuesday. A headline announced that she was facing a federal fraud indictment. Loren's ego had led her to brag in a private Facebook group for widows about how to hide assets. The DOJ was now involved. Eldon, in a tie over a tank top, testified before grand jury and even apologized to my son on video. My son handed me a birthday card. Inside was an email from the state treasurer's office stating that my father's trust had been reinstated in full, with me as custodian. At the bottom was a note from my father's binder. He's your boy now. Make sure he never forgets where he came from or what his name means. I was finally okayed at the trial. She refused a plea deal and was later found passed out in her car from heat exhaustion, with a printout of my father's obituary on the passenger seat. They committed her for observation. When she got out, she was a ghost of her former self, selling essential oils on Etsy. I took Charlie to the cabin, and we hung up my father's flag. The name Whitlock was burned into the wood above the door. The war was over, and the name she tried to poison was now carved in stone, a permanent legacy.